Hello everybody, this is Docs. In this episode, we kind of bury this in the middle, so in order to make sure everybody's aware of this, I'm going to say it up front. We are pooling some money together, me and Nick. We are going to match up to $500 of viewer donations to LGBT and especially trans-focused charities and organizations. So, if you are interested in participating in this, please just send us an email at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com with a screenshot or some kind of proof of your donation, and we will match that donation up to $500 total. For a more thorough explanation of why we're doing this, please continue listening to the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Buddhish. We'd like to start the episode by thanking and acknowledging Into the Biscuit. They are our friends who also podcast, and they had us on for a guest appearance, and we had a ton of fun with them. They are really fun guys to talk to, and we had a really interesting discussion about storytelling in Buddhism. And we just want to thank them and acknowledge them, and I hope that they have us back on sometime soon, because we had a great time and it was a really good episode.
Yeah, and we have noticed a increase in users since then, so welcome. I hope you enjoy.
Yes, welcome to the podcast, and I hope that you learned something about Buddhism.
Right. So let's get on to what Buddhish is. So this is us being off topic. We're not going to talk about Buddhism in today's episode very much, if at all. And I'll also be doing a lot less editing of these episodes. You're going to hear what we actually sound like when we're talking, and without me going through and cutting out every time I go stutter, or take 2 seconds to figure out what I want to say.
These are a lot more informal, with no script, no bound on time, and no bound on topic. So today, we are going to be talking about the issue facing our country, the United States, of this massive wave of these super conservative, theocratic, horrifying, anti-trans laws that are either about to be passed or have been passed in several different states. This is a massive issue that is infringing on the human rights of a very vital, important, very huge part of the population. And we just wanted to discuss that problem and vent about that problem and direct our listeners towards that problem and towards possible solutions.
So for a bit of context, what brought this on was a tweet from the account @NotLasers, named listed as J. Edenden. It just came across my feed randomly. And so the thread goes, "Hi, if you're a comics person or a podcaster or anyone with an audience, I'm writing this to encourage you to stray out of your lane and advocate actively for trans youth. When you're mostly working in the arts, it can feel like a big departure and a big risk to step back and address something so heavily politicized, and that's exactly why you should do it. What about an emergency announcement gets your attention? It's not the announcement itself, it already has your attention by this point, but the interruption of the programming you expect. And this, my God, this is a massive emergency. Lives are on the line, there's a huge organized hate campaign writing policy with a carte blanche. And trust me, they give no fucks about staying in their lane. If you have a platform, there was always going to be a time where you had to make a choice about what that means in terms of ethical imperative. That time is now. Step up. You have power, even if it only feels like a little. This is the responsibility part."
So that's just what we are doing. We are straying out of our lane of trying to educate people about Buddhism through literary sources and through scriptural sources based on user-submitted questions. And we are aiming to use our listener base, use our platform to take a stand on this issue, be it politicized or not. These anti-trans campaigns are, like @NotLasers says, awful hate campaigns. And in that regard, lives indeed are on the line. So that's why we decided to do this episode, and that is what brought this whole thing about.
We don't have a huge platform, granted, but I looked at the metrics, that was at least 20, and that's not nothing, so here we go. And I suspect that most of our viewers coming from my friend group and coming from Into the Biscuit, both generally progressive places, I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this, from my end at least, is already aware of this and already furious about it. But yeah, 20 is not nothing, so here we go. Let's get out of our lane.
Exactly. So let's start by talking about some of the anti-trans laws that are on the docket across the United States in different places, different scales, levels of government, and different levels of targeting and restricting or erasing the rights of trans people, what few they had before we went into this horrible campaign. So,
especially trans children.
Trans children. So the website that we are using, which will be posted in the show notes to discuss some of these anti-trans laws and where they are happening, is called freedomforallamericans.org. It has a legislative tracker, which allows you to look in real time at all these different laws that are coming up on legislative sessions across the United States. And it even has a convenient map, which tells you where there are the most anti-trans laws or anti-LGBTQ laws or anti-youth healthcare laws, etc., all across the nation. And currently, in the state of Arizona and the state of Tennessee and in Iowa, there's up to 14 bills that are about to be passed in order to restrict the laws, restrict the rights, and the health, the accessibility to health for trans youth. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the laws that we have seen that have infuriated us enough to do an episode on it?
I was not prepared for that.
That's okay. No, I can
yeah.
jump into it.
Yeah, go for it. I'm only just now looking into this website. Sorry, this was a bit of a spur of the moment thing, so I was not as prepared as I would have liked to have been. So,
yeah, no problem.
Go for it.
So many of these laws are targeting the issue having to do with trans athletes, trans student athletic participants. And all of these laws are trying to both restrict them from their competitions, and they're also trying to restrict those people from even competing in a lot of these competitions. And this is being used as a spark to light a flame to pass all kinds of other anti-trans laws which seek to restrict healthcare access for all kinds of trans youth.
And it is also going to be used as a wedge to restrict LGB people, in addition to the T people that are being restricted right now. Like, that's what's happening. We're backsliding on all of the progress we've made for people who are not straight since the early 2000s. Like, it's all in jeopardy now. They're not going to stop with the trans people.
And much of it can be traced to headlines that I'm sure that many of you have seen, which are involving massive, horrible, transphobic debates lighting up over trans athletes winning certain competitions or even just competing in certain competitions. This whole event is being used, like we were saying, to start a new wave of queerphobic laws that seek to harm the citizens of the nation, right? Because these people are citizens of the nations entitled to the rights that everyone who is a citizen of this nation is entitled to, and therefore it is really government-sponsored violence, government-sponsored weaponry against LGBTQ people. And we wanted to call attention to that and really condemn that and share our views on why this is a problem, how this is a problem, in what places in particular this is a problem, and what can be done if you are able to do something about it.
So, where to start? I suppose start with, I suspect this is unlikely because, again, most of our audience is from our friend groups and or Into the Abiscuit, but on the off chance that we have anybody who is going to vote for Republicans listening right now, fuck off. Yeah. Just fuck you, go to hell, there's no excuse anymore, fuck off.
Yeah, this is not a place for people like that. This truly is not a place for people like that. We don't welcome hateful people into this podcast audience, because this is not a podcast where we discuss anything that is worth hating, and we don't discuss anything that is really your place to hate, and we don't really want that in our community. That's just not a healthy community to have, and we care about how our community is equal and fair and equitable and all have a voice and are all kind to each other.
And yes, the Republicans are a hate group at this point. They've been a hate group since Reagan, but at this point it's obvious and undeniable. So just, there are no more excuses. You can't stop trans kids from being trans, but you can stop being a Republican. And if you're not willing to do that, I don't want you consuming my content. I look forward to meeting you in hell.
It's hilarious how they are trying to pass laws such as the Don't Say Gay bill, which restricts sexual education even more so than it already was in red
sexual
states.
Education that didn't exist. My sexual education was some guy coming in and saying, "Hey, stay virgins until you're married." That was it. That's all I got. And what the hell? It makes me so angry.
They're trying to say, you're not allowed to say gay in schools, but you're also showing us Tucker Carlson's face and Matt Gaetz's face and acting like that's, it's a backwards way of thinking.
So let's talk about solutions for a bit. So we have a big list of LGBTQ plus organizations that we will be linking in the show notes, all of which are doing their part to help alleviate this bullshit. So let's see. This was spur of the moment. I have not read this list yet. So Nick, let's talk about what we've got here.
So if you just type into Google any sort of pro LGBTQ plus or any sort of pro trans activism groups, you'll find piles and piles and piles of them. And most all of them that will come up on your search at the very least are worth donating to. One of them that at Not Lasers refers to in their tweet thread that caused us to even make this. There is a fundraiser out there that has to do with that person's podcast. And that fundraiser is for an organization called Equality Florida. And what their task is to do, according to their Twitter bio, is to secure full equality for Florida's LGBTQ plus community. And they're holding a fundraiser right now to restrict and to go up against the Ron DeSantis Don't Say Gay bill that we were just talking about. So that is absolutely a very good organization to donate to. That being said, we should know there are plenty of state-level organizations just like that one, not just in Florida. As I mentioned earlier, there's 12 bills in Arizona. There's 14 bills in Iowa and in Tennessee. There's 9 bills in Oklahoma. I mean, there's tons of bills all over the United States. Even in blue states, such as Washington, or in or somewhere like even Rhode Island. that are restricting the health access or restricting the rights of some dimension of a trans person's life, right? And so we have to find state level activism groups to donate to, of course, but there's also national groups. Some of them include the Family Equality Council. Some of them include the LGBT National Help Center, the Human Rights Campaign. There's also advocacy groups for trans youth in particular, such as Advocates for Youth or Centerlink or Children of Lesbian and Gays Everywhere, Equality Federation. All of these are excellent organizations that you can donate to or that you can participate in somehow. If you don't have money to give, then try and give time, try and raise awareness somehow. Do something because you can do something and you should do something. There is a moral imperative here. This is not something that we can just really sit by and watch on Twitter or on the news and be like, God, that sucks, and then move on with our lives. This is truly, truly government-sponsored attacks on a part of the community, right? There are people in the community who are being completely targeted by local governments, state governments, and federal governments, and they're having their civil liberties taken away and infringed upon. And we can't just sit by and let that happen. That's not something that you can really sleep at night if you just kind of let it happen and don't do anything. So I encourage all of you to donate time, money, or any kind of resources you can to any one of these organizations I've just listed, or
so let me butt in here for a minute. While you were talking, I looked up some state level organizations in Tennessee. Drew, the guy we talked to on Into the Biscuit, is from Tennessee and is very vocal about that. So I think that that's a fitting specific spot to focus in on for now. I want to shout out the Tennessee Equality Project. Just a quick overview. The Tennessee Equality Project is a statewide organization dedicated to promote and sustain the equality of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender persons in the state of Tennessee through the establishment of fair and equitable laws protecting these rights. We also work for the elimination of laws that would seek to counter this effort. I also see Southerners on New Ground, or SONG. It is a home for LGBTQ liberation across all lines of race, class, abilities, age, culture, gender, and sexuality in the South. We build, sustain, and connect a Southern regional base of LGBTQ people in order to transform the region. So, those are a couple that I found that, again, assuming that we're getting listeners from Into the Biscuit, then there might be a few folks in this audience who have some strong feelings about Tennessee. There's where you could send your effort. So you were talking before about targeted. Like, I don't remember which state it was, but I remember one of the states that had an anti-trans athletes ban has one trans athlete. An entire state passed a law to bully one person. That is your baseline, level of how much can you deal with this? How much bullshit are we supposed to stomach at this point? One person is affected by this law, and they did nothing to deserve it. So, yeah, I'm ready to put my money where my mouth is. I'm putting $250 of my own money up to match any listener donations.
That's right, and I'm doing the same for a total of $500 matched for all listeners. And we encourage you to give if you can. Yeah.
We have an email, bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. Just send us an email with a screenshot of your donation or some kind of proof that you did it, and we will repeat. So, yeah. What else do we need to say?
Not much more other than this is your tax dollars at work. So vote better.
I mean, that brings a whole other thing in mind. Like, I did specifically say fuck Republicans, and I totally stand by that, but the Democrats suck too.
Well, they absolutely do. I mean, many of these states that are blue that I was talking about have plenty of anti-trans laws. And so that's not to say that one side, the left is that good, that great. But I mean, I wouldn't
even consider Democrats leftists at this point. What's happened is that the Republicans have become so far right-wing that what we think is left-wing is actually moderate right-wing / centrist. That's what's actually happened.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Those who are just like, in other countries considered pretty moderate are actually the Bernie Sanderses of the United States.
Right. Like, hey, rich people should pay taxes. Oh, God. But but we need to be, we're rambling at this point, I think, so.
That's another Buddhish episode, but I do encourage, I do encourage people to politically engage. And the reason why I say that is that although Democrats are very problematic, super problematic.
I'll say it, they suck. They're like, fuck them, too. Yes. But fuck the Republicans harder.
Exactly. Even though they are as shitty as they are, saying, okay, well, both sides are bad, so I'm not even going to vote, gives it to the Republicans, gives it to the people who want to be violent upon the citizens of this country. Whenever people are apathetic, that is even more dangerous than voting for a Republican. Because all of the hateful people in this United States, you are outnumbered. And it is just by your use of apathy as a weapon that you've been able to hold power for as long as you have. But if we actually engage, if we actually stand up for what is right, then there's no way to let hate win.
We have to behave tactically at this point. Don't get me wrong. Joe Biden is an asshole. Also pathetic at this point. But Donald Trump is actively evil. You go for the lesser evil. That's how I'm going to go anyway. If you can't bring yourself to vote for Joe Biden for some reason, at least get out and march for LGBTQ people.
Exactly.
Just do something. Because that's the part that's hurting my mind so much. We're not doing anything. No one is doing anything big right now, other than those. We've got the projects that we've mentioned. There's plenty of people who are trying to do it, but none of. Why I just don't get how the people that we have elected are seriously not doing anything on the nation level. Nothing at all. This is why it's hard to vote for Democrats, because they don't do anything either.
Exactly. Do you want someone that does nothing, or do you want someone that actively targets and attacks people in the United States in a political way, or honestly, even in like a day-to-day public way? I mean, we see so many incidences of violence exacted upon other people by common people who are radical right, who they just are Republican and angry, and they want to shoot up a school, or they want to punch people on airlines for asking them to wear a mask or dumb shit like that. And the Democrats are like, okay, we will consider your opinion, right?
Yeah.
And that points to a tolerance paradox. If you tolerate intolerance, intolerance wins. You didn't win because you were tolerant. You lost because you tolerated something that was actively contrary to tolerance as a principle.
Neutrality always benefits the oppressor.
Exactly. And this is nothing to be neutral about. This is absolutely nothing to be neutral about. Regardless of political orientation, regardless of if you know somebody or are somebody who is in the LGBTQ community, or if you are an ally, you cannot be neutral on this because, like we've said, lives are on the line.
I'm a cishet white dude, the most privileged, the only way I could be more privileged would have been if I were rich, which I'm not. That's the one check mark I don't have. Now, that's a very important check mark, but also, being a cishet white dude has also simplified my life significantly, and that sucks, not because my life is simpler, but because others' lives are more complicated.
Exactly. I'm in the exact same boat. And if there are white cishet males who are listening to this, or anyone who has any sort of privilege, I encourage you to step outside of your box and think for a second. What if you were the singular trans athlete who you were just trying to live out your passion, the sport that you wanted to play for the rest of your life, and then suddenly, because people just hate you so much, they made an entire law just to fuck with you, just to fuck your life up.
What else? Anything else? I feel like that might do it. We don't need to linger on this, and we've already taken a couple of side tracks. Like, trans rights are human rights. Like, this shouldn't be complicated. And what do you do at this point? I'm in a part of the country where it is a given that a Republican is going to win. My vote could not matter less. Like, right in the middle of the Bible Belt, Democrats have no chance here. But if you are not in that area, I implore you to vote, even if you have to do it with a bitter taste in your mouth.
And if you are, or if you know someone who is part of the LGBTQ community, reach out and express that you're there for them. Reach out and express that, you're on their side. Reach out and express that their lives, that you believe that their lives are valid, and that goes without saying. Because we don't have to have, as cis white males, anyone tell us that they think our lives are valid.
Everybody already does that by default.
Exactly. That's the unspoken rule of society, is that everything that's not that is invalid. And so, that being the case, reach out to everybody you know and express solidarity, express compassion, express anything that you can to show that this is not a losing battle. It's just a long battle. It is just an extremely long battle. And show that you're on their side on that battle.
Agreed. I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.